Days Rum presents the Sales, Wales and Whiskey Show. Playing all your favourite hits from the 1800s. The finest sea songs and shanties and the best of the folk tradition. Tune in to Waiheke Radio, Saturdays at 1, 6 o'clock Thursdays, 2 o'clock Tuesdays. Check us out at waihekeradio.org.nz or Facebook under Sales, Wales and Whiskey. Sales, Wales and Whiskey is proudly brought to you by Wild Days Rum.
Yeah, kia ora guys, Stephen here. And yeah, a big thanks to Russell for sponsoring the show for Wild Days Rum. All right, so today's show we're going to do, in light of the rugby game that was most recently played between the All Blacks and the Wallabies, the World Cup final. We all know the result, but it seems like a good idea just to sit back and do a bit of New Zealand and Australian music. Combined with that is I've been really throwing myself into the recordings and writings of Phil Garland after he played at the Rocky Bay Folk Show a few weeks ago, and reading his book Faces in the Firelight, it just shows how in the 1800s at least the heritage of New Zealand and Australia was so much intertwined, especially the dudes that were going around following the gold from Adelaide out to here and around the place. So with that in mind, we're going to have a go at New Zealand and Australian songs. So I know I did a bush band show quite recently, so I was trying and steer clear of a few of those, and a few of those songs that I've already played. Apart from that, let's get into it. So what I'll do is play a sea shanty that has a New Zealand variant that I didn't know about. This one's a long time ago and sung by Phil Garland.
Auckland town, way ho, hi-yo, where the pretty girls walk up and down a long time ago. Aye, it is a long time and a very long time. Way ho, hi-yo, a long time and a very long time, a long time ago. I wish to the Lord that I'd never been born. Way ho, hi-yo, to go a-wandering round Cape Horn a long time ago. Aye, it is a long time and a very long time. Way ho, hi-yo, a long time and a very long time, a long time ago. Around Cape Horn with frozen sail. Way ho, hi-yo, around Cape Horn to hunt for whale a long time ago. Aye, it is a long time and a very long time. Way ho, hi-yo, a long time and a very long time, a long time ago.
Awesome. So that was a long time ago. If you didn't pick it up. All right. So what I'll do now is I'll just play one more song which I cannot believe I've not played before on the show, called Bright Fine Gold, which is Phil's another one of Phil's album, traditional, perhaps the chorus at least is the oldest, one of the oldest Pākehā songs in the country, and we'll play that, and then I'll get into the interview that I did with him, so to give you a bit of background, and then we'll kick into the rest of the show. Okay, Bright Fine Gold.
A flash in the pan, a glint of gold, a shift of sand, a story told, a rumour that swells and grows and grows, a strike, a fabulous strike. Where is it? Where is it? Nobody knows. Excepting perhaps it's possibly down at Hamilton's, Styx or Hartley Town. Or maybe it's Hyde or Skippers or Blacks. But meanwhile, 10,000 men are out on the tracks, searching, searching, searching. A flash in the pan has bid us stray over the hills and far away. Bright fine gold, bright fine gold, Wonga pecker to a pecker, bright fine gold. Spend it in the winter or die of the cold. Wonga pecker to a pecker, bright fine gold. I'm weary of Otago, I'm weary of the snow. If I should strike it rich away, I will go. Bright fine gold, bright fine gold, Wonga pecker to a pecker, bright fine gold. It cannot light a lantern, it cannot cure a pain, but still I'll go on searching, although it's all in vain. I came to make my fortune far across the sea, but the riches in the river were not for such as me. Bright fine gold, bright fine gold, Wonga pecker to a pecker, bright fine gold.
All right, welcome, Phil.
Thank you.
We're so this is a interview before your show tonight at the Rocky Bay Hall. We've it's been a huge honour and really exciting to have you over, and really glad that you accepted to come. So for those who aren't aware of your heritage or your pedigree, you were saying before to me that you'd started out folk clubs in the 60s, and you've had quite a lot of success, and you've done a lot of is it 3 books now, or is it 2 and 1 to come out?
3 books, and there's another one at the publisher at the moment.
Right, and then 17 albums, is it?
Something like that.
Yeah. So my take is you've had a unique impact on the history, especially with folk music, and especially New Zealand folk history, which seems to be a little bit of a subject that's been overlooked, seems to me anyway. So, like I said, we're very, very excited to have you come over. Very, very excited for tonight, and can't wait to hear. So, my first real question is, why folk music? What got you into it?
It's a long story. I started out life singing rock and roll back in the late 50s, early 60s. And I had 5 years full time with rock and roll, and fortunately or unfortunately, whichever way you like to look at it, I managed a number 1 hit record in that time as well. But I didn't play guitar really, I just sang. And I was working in Christchurch at a nightclub called the Plainsman, and we used to rehearse I was there 5 nights a week, and we used to rehearse in the afternoons. And I remember coming away from one of the practices and passing Begg's music store down High Street in Christchurch, and in the window was a Gibson 12-string guitar. Now, I'd never seen one before, and I went into them and I asked them, I said, "What do you use that for?" They said, "Oh, we don't know, we've never seen one before." So I picked it up, and I knew a couple of chords on a guitar, and I strummed it, and I thought, what a beautiful sound. So I went away and I thought about it, and I did some research, and looking on the back of LP records and seeing that some folk people used a Gibson 12-string, or 12-string records, people like Lead Belly and some of the folk groups. And so when I thought, well, this is very nice, I think... And I'd saved up my money at that stage. I was going to head off to Australia and try my luck as a rock and roll singer. So I took the money and I went in and I bought this guitar. And I thought, now I've spent all this money, I'm going to have to learn to play it. So I used to sit down, I'd get up in the morning at 8 o'clock and I'd spend 4 or 5 hours every day with a Pete Seeger instruction book in front of me, learning to play this guitar. And then I'd go off to the practice with the rock and roll band. And eventually I started to incorporate the guitar into one of my late night sets. And I was sitting on a stool with the band playing sort of semi-acoustically behind me, and I was singing songs like 500 Miles and Four Strong Winds, and I think a song called Don't Let the Sun Catch You Crying, which was quite a well-known song at the time. In came a bunch of folkies led by who became a very good friend of mine, a fellow called Warwick Brock. And he looked at me and he said, "You're wasting your time here. Why don't you come to the folk club with us?" So I went to the folk club with them on the Sunday night, and they were sitting round swigging from crocks of Tullamore Dew and singing sea songs, shanties and Irish songs, and I was hooked.
Yeah.
And I've never looked back.
Oh, that sounds great. I wish there was more stories like that these days. So that's the music, but what about the history? Because it's not just the music that you're famous for, it's for the digging out of songs and finding the histories behind songs. So,
when I started going to the folk club, I was playing what everybody else was playing. I was playing American folk songs and some British folk songs. And all of a sudden this fellow called Bob Dylan arrived on the scene. And so writing meaningful folk songs seemed to be all the go. So I thought I'd have a go at that.
Yeah.
And so I tried writing some songs, American folk songs, but everything came out with a New Zealand twist. And so I sang the first 3 songs that I wrote, I sang them at the folk club, and people actually enjoyed them. And they came to me and said, "Oh, did you know there's such a thing as traditional New Zealand song?" I said, "No." So they pointed me in the direction of a group called the Song Spinners, who had 3 EPs out at that stage of gold mining songs, sealing and whaling songs, and gum digging songs. So I picked some songs out of that, and then off I went. I had about half a dozen New Zealand songs in my repertoire. And then I went and did my big OE in 1965. I went to England. And travelling around visiting British folk clubs, I soon became aware of how much part of the tradition, everyday life and tradition was in England. And I started thinking to myself, there's got to be something more back home. So that when I came back home, while I'd been away, a fellow called Frank Fife had started the New Zealand Folklore Society in Wellington. And Warwick Brock, my old mate, said, "Come up with me and I'll introduce you to Frank." So I went up to Wellington, met Frank, and we hit it off straight away. And Frank was really interested in the idea of collecting. And I was all up for that sort of thing because I was, really fresh from this idea that there had to be something more back home. So with a bit of a grant from the Folklore Society and the National Folk Foundation, they gave me a tape recorder, and off I went into the wilds of the South Island, looking for old timers and asking them for songs.
Right.
But before long, I realised I was looking for more than songs because I started to hear stories and yarns and Backblock's verse, so I collected all of it.
Right.
And I did this for quite some time until the money ran out. But from then on, it was on a weekend basis, because by then I was running a folk club 4 nights a week in Christchurch. And so weekends and times when I had time, I would carry on collecting. Always had a tape recorder in the car with me. You never know when you're going to meet somebody that had something special. And since then, I've continued collecting and researching ever since. And I find that every concert that I do is a potential field collecting exercise.
Right.
Because people come up to me afterwards and say, "Oh, you should come and meet my grandfather or my uncle, or listen, I've got this bit of verse that so-and-so in the family's written."
Right.
And so stuff keeps coming to me all the time. And so much so that just recently I'm in touch with like-minded people overseas. And I was in touch with this fellow from Sydney who sings whaling songs and sea songs. And he sent me the lyrics to a song that he'd found in the Australian of 1832, words called a thing called the Piracy of the Wellington, and it's about a bunch of convicts who were being transported to Norfolk Island, and they mutinied and took over the ship and sailed the Wellington to the Bay of Islands, where the ringleaders were actually captured and sent back to Port Jackson and then sent to Norfolk Island in perpetuity.
Right.
But there's the story and there's this connection, something we've never seen before, 1832. So, I mean, this research is ongoing. It still comes. This is only 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, how wonderful.
It's marvellous.
So, I'm interested. So when you listen to Irish and Scottish and a lot of English stuff, you get a few recurring characters in there. You get the rover or the jilted lover and things like that. Are there any uniquely New Zealand characters that pop up, or perhaps unique to New Zealand and Australia?
There's only one that recurring that really crops up. Is a fellow called the Shiner, an old swagman.
Oh yeah.
And who spent 50 odd years roaming the roads of New Zealand, carefully avoiding work. And there's some marvellous stories and yarns about him, and there's about 3 or 4 songs and a couple of poems that I've picked up of him.
Right.
So yeah, he's a recurring character, but generally speaking, no, there aren't characters as such. In more recent times, people have started writing about some of those rogues and rascals that were around. Chris Priestley in Auckland, for example, is doing that. And but you can trace New Zealand history through folk song. You get the sealers and the whalers, then you get immigration, then you get the gold rush, and then you get the gum fields, and you get the first depression of the 1880s. And in the swagman on the road, so it all takes you through to the 1900s, and then on from there.
So tell me about the swagman. So swagman seems like a bit of an old-fashioned trade these days. You don't see too many swagmen around, or do you?
You don't. No. The last of the New Zealand swagmen was in the 1950s.
Right.
A fellow called Russian Jack and the Wairarapa. He was the last of them. There's about 75 years of New Zealand history with swagmen on New Zealand roads, and most of the people tend to look at them as being rascals and vagrants and vagabonds, but not all of them were. A lot of them were men who'd lost their jobs and were on the road genuinely looking for work. But occasionally you came across one. The Shiner's a perfect example of someone who became so enamoured of the life on the road that they did it for better or worse. There's still a swagman on Australian roads at the moment. His name is Campbell the Swaggy, or Campbell Irving, and he's part Maori and he's from Auckland.
Oh, is that right?
And he goes to every folk festival and country music festival that's on the go, up and down the east coast of Australia.
Wow.
And he's a well-known character. Everybody picks him up.
Yeah.
For example, if you or I were at, say, a folk festival in Melbourne and you were heading for something in Queensland and you left at the same time as Campbell, and he'd be on foot and you'd be in a car, he'd beat you the other end, because all the truckies, everyone knows him and picks him up and takes him.
Right.
And he can recite practically everything written by Henry Lawson.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Remarkable.
So it is. It's a lost art.
Yeah. So what was the a swagman would have no fixed abode and just be walking, maybe doing a circuit looking for work? Yep.
They'd sleep at the side of the road or in little huts or however. A lot of them died by the side of the road, frozen overnight.
So the other thing I'm really interested in is this whole concept of bush bands, which seems to be a unique thing to New Zealand and Australia, if I'm not wrong. And that seems to be a purely New Zealand or a purely Australian, Australasian genre of music.
It's very much, I think it's more Australian than New Zealand as such.
Right.
Bush bands of people just played whatever instruments came to hand. That always in the Australian bush were concertinas and the occasional fiddle player, and maybe sometimes there was a piano player as well. But then they wanted percussion, so someone thought of the idea of creating a lagerphone, which was the up-ended broomstick covered in bottle tops and played with a ratchet. And bones, of course, and all sorts of instruments like that. The gum leaf was involved in Australia. They used to have gum leaf competitions. And of course, but there's such close relationship between Australia and New Zealand. From the time of the gold rush, Australians were crossing the Tasman. See, they went from California to the Australian gold rush, to the Otago gold rush, to the west coast. And then some of them went back to Australia, and then others headed off to the Klondike in Canada.
Right.
So they brought their music with them, and later on we had Australian shearers crossing the Tasman, looking for work on the high country stations. They brought with them the poetry of Banjo Patterson and Henry Lawson, which in turn influenced New Zealand writers. And so we have this cross-pollination, if you like. And it's only a matter of... that the isolation wasn't there, and the instruments came across the Tasman as well, and people were here. Yes, it's quite common to find the concertina, particularly in the early days, squeeze boxes, harmonicas, and fiddles. So it's only a logical step to starting a bush band. I mean, yes, the lagerphone is definitely an Australian invention, and it made its way here. The bush bass or the wash tub bass. Wash tub was used in the States for the jug bands. So, I mean, it's a common idea. We had people here taking the old half-gallon jar and half filling it with water or various levels of water, and they used to either blow across it or rub it up and down a door jamb to get a bit of sound from it.
Really?
It's amazing what they used to do. I mean, and if you want a proper bush band sound for New Zealand... the Gungadai band from the West Coast are the perfect example.
Oh, yeah.
They were about a 15-piece band. They were formed to preserve the gold mining music from the West Coast goldfields. And they had about 3 or 4 squeeze boxes, 2 or 3 fiddles, a banjo, a bass drum, a couple of side drummers, someone on bones, whistles, and all played in unison.
Incredible.
And it was quite an amazing sound when they first started. But over the years, they've as they've got older and the numbers have dropped, until fairly recently, about 20-odd years ago, they were going to fold. There was only one way they could carry on, and that was introduce women into the band.
Right.
They were teaching children, and a couple of young fellas joined, but they needed the numbers. And I've been in touch with the Gungadai band a few times, and I know them quite well. And the first time I saw them with women there, I didn't know there were women there because they're dressed exactly the same as the men. You know, and in the moleskin trousers and the cummerbund and the whole thing. And from a distance, they look like blokes until you get closer and see the bumps in the different places. But and that's enabled the band to continue. So I would say about a third of the band these days are women.
Right, and they're still going, these guys?
They're still going. Oh, yeah, absolutely. They've just had their centenary.
Oh, really?
They were formed originally in 1910.
Is that right?
Thereabouts, yeah.
Oh, incredible. I have to look. I don't have any...
There's a couple of albums of theirs.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff.
Dig it out. Excellent, excellent. Cool. Well, I think that's all the questions I have for you, so I really, really appreciate your time. We've... as I said, it's a great honour to have you come and play at our little folk club, and we're really looking forward to it. All the best for the future.
Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to tonight as well.
Awesome.
Choice, so that was the interview. It was a really awesome night. We had a full house. Really, the crowd was so cool. Everyone got into it, singing along, and we had a really cool session afterwards, actually. We kept Phil out a bit late. We kept asking him to give us some yarns and stories and songs. All right, so now what I'll do is I'll play a couple of LPs that I've got. So one guy who has added a huge amount to the New Zealand folk tradition is this guy called Peter Cape, who... has written a lot of original stuff in the style of traditional folk music, and it's awesome stuff. And his most famous song, I think, is probably this one, "She'll Be Right," which is a sort of a funny, like a comical New Zealand song, but it captures something unique about this country. After that, we're going to go and play an Australian Australian folk singer. I actually just picked this album up the other day. Someone left it in the studio, and so I've acquired it. This guy here, Dave de Huggard. And so we'll go from one to the other. So it's a She'll Be Right, followed by the Wallaby track.
When you're hunting in the mountains and your dogs put up a chase, and this porker's coming at you and he doesn't like your face, and you're running and he's crowding on the pace. Well, don't worry, mate, she'll be right. She'll be right, mate, she'll be right. Don't worry, mate, she'll be right. You can get your feed a pork when he slows down to a walk, so don't worry, mate, she'll be right. When you're logging on the saddle and you're driving down the bluff with 1,000 feet of timber bouncing right behind your chuff, and the clutch has started slipping and the brakes are worse than rough. Well, don't worry, mate, she'll be right. She'll be right, mate, she'll be right. Don't worry, mate, she'll be right. If you give all you can give her, she'll just fly into the river, so don't worry, mate, she'll be right. When you've walked out on the missus and you're gone to watch them race, and you took her shopping money and you didn't get a place, and you're coming home flat stony and she sees it in your face. Well, don't worry, mate, she'll be right. She'll be right, mate, she'll be right. Don't worry, mate, she'll be right. You can save a lot of trouble if you say you won the double, so don't worry, mate, she'll be right. When you've had the copper going and you boiled a ton of hops, and you brewed your brew and bottled her and hammered on the tops, and your missus keeps on asking where you left your footy socks. Well, don't worry, mate, she'll be right. She'll be right, mate, she'll be right. Don't worry, mate, she'll be right. Shove a shot of metho in her and you'll swear you're drinking gin, so don't worry, mate, she'll be right. When they finished off your forward and your backs are wearing thin, and the second spell's half over and you've 40 points to win, and this hulking wing three-quarters got his teeth stuck in your shin. Don't worry, mate, she'll be right. She'll be right, mate, she'll be right. Don't worry, mate, she'll be right. You won't worry who's the loser when you meet them down the boozer, so don't worry, mate, she'll be right. Come on, all together. She'll be right, mate, she'll be right. Yes, she'll be right. Don't worry, mate, she'll be right. You won't worry who's the loser when you meet them down the boozer, so don't worry, mate, she'll be right.
One morning I rolled up the few things I'd got, and I strapped to me saddle, me quart and pint pot, and I told the boss, I said I'd soon be back. I was off for a trip on the Wallaby track. Oh, the morning was fine, though it blew rather cold, and the sun was just topping the mountains with gold. And me favourite old dingo following close to the back, and he knew we were off on the Wallaby track. Oh, with the toodle-lie-yoodle-lie, toodle-lie-yoodle, with the tiddle-lie-dum doodle-lie, toodle-lie-yay. With me toodle-lie-yoodle and a whack fall the toodle, with me tiddle-lie-dum doodle-lie, tiddle-dum all day. Oh, we'd a fair way to go to an old camping place, so we're rattling along at a pretty good pace, where friends we would meet when provisions were slack, and they all lived close by to the Wallaby track. Oh well, we hadn't gone very far, I suppose, when we met with the girl who said, "G'day, Joe." I said, "You're mistaken, my name it is Jack, and I'm off for a trip on the Wallaby track." Oh, with me toodle-lie, toodle-lie-yodel, with me tiddle-lie-dum, doodle-lie, toodle-lie-ay. Me toodle-lie-yodel, and the whack fall the toodle, with me tiddle-lie-dum, doodle-lie, tiddle-dum all day. She said, "Get off your horse, oh rest yourself now. Did you see on your travels me old poley cow? You remember the one that we used to call Black? I'm afraid she is gone on the Wallaby track." So I got off me horse and I patted me dog, and we both sat together on a stringy bark log. And I made up the fire and ratted the pack, and we both had a meal on the Wallaby track. With the toodle-lie-yodel-lie, tiddle-lie-dum-doodle, with me toodle-lie-yodel-lie, tiddle-lie-dum-day. With me toodle-lie-yodel, and the whack fall the toodle-lie, tiddle-lie-dum-doodle-lie, tiddle-dum all day. So we sat in the shade of the stringy bark tree, this fine young girl as you ever did see. She asks, "Where am I going? When will I be back? Oh, and why am I off on the Wallaby track?" So I told her then I was looking for a wife. Oh, and would she take on a partner for life? And like a sensible girl, well, she said it's a whack. It was the end of me trip on the Wallaby track. But not the toodle-lie-yodel-lie, toodle-lie-yodel-lie, tiddle-lie-dum, doodle-lie, tiddle-lie-dum-day. Oh, and plenty of toodle-lie, whack fall the toodle, I tiddle-lie-dum, doodle-lie, tiddle-dum all day.
Choice. So that was funny. This new guy, Dave de Huggard. Okay, so what I thought I'd do now is play a couple of the more famous versions of New Zealand and Australian songs. So we'll start off with Nick Jones doing the Humpback Whale, or otherwise known as Ballina Whalers. Enjoy.
'56 I sailed on board a ship called Byron One. She's carried trawler men on deck and a harpoon whaling gun. Oh, you trawler men, come on, forget your snapper and your prawn, for it's out of Ballina we'll sail, fishing for the humpback whale. Tractor for a whale winch, and the ship's an old fair mile. Twin diesels turn the screws around, she'll whale in a fine old style. Oh, you trawler men, come on, forget your snapper and your prawn, for it's out of Ballina we'll sail, fishing for the humpback whale. a sharp look out, me lads. The whale, he's on the run, and we'll drive him into Byron Bay, and we'll shoot him with our guns. Oh, you trawler men, come on, forget your snapper and your prawn, for it's out of Ballina we'll sail, fishing for the humpback whale. The harpoon and the line fly through very deep into the whale. She split the timbers of the ship with a flurry of her tail. Oh, you trawler men, come on, forget your snapper and your prawn, for it's out of Ballina we'll sail, fishing for the humpback whale. The rigging struts are snapped in two, we reel beneath the blow. The gunner fires the killer shot, and that humpback's sent below. Oh, you trawler men, come on, forget your snapper and your prawn, for it's out of Ballina we'll sail, fishing for the humpback whale. Make her tail fast to the bows, we got no time for bed. For 24 hours each day we kept that factory fed. Oh, you trawler men, come on, forget your snapper and your prawn, for it's out of Ballina we'll sail, fishing for the humpback whale. The Flensing men upon the land, some had been jackaroos. They skinned the blubber from the whales like they're skinning kangaroos. Oh, you trawler men, come on, forget your snapper and your prawn, for it's out of Ballina we'll sail, fishing for the humpback whale. 100 whales and then 50 more through the factory we did send, and then the orders came, knock off me lads, your season's at an end. Oh, you trawler men, come on, forget your snapper and your prawn, for it's out of Ballina we'll sail, fishing for the humpback whale. Back into Ballina we steered, tied up and stowed the gear. All hands headed for the pub, and we filled ourselves with beer. Oh, you trawler men, come on, forget your snapper and your prawn, for it's out of Ballina we'll sail, fishing for the humpback whale.
Choice. That was Humpback Whale, Nick Jones, of course. Got to say that nearly put me to sleep, actually. I need something a bit more lively. So let's play the Queensland Railway song by the Gumbies Bush Band.
railway lines. There are places where one dines private in the teaching roles. Also run refreshment stalls. Hogan, Rolling Stone, Bungaberg and Marathon, Castle under Pinken Bar, Wanko Yama. Males and females high and dry hang around the Jurek High. Boromunga, Jarrett Wong, Gillingham, Go Wongle Pong. Hogan, Rolling Stone, Bungaberg and Marathon, Castle under Pinken Bar, Wanko Yama. Coffee bars and showers are supplied at Charters Towers at Mackayla's Rookery Vales of restricting shouts of males. Hogan, Rolling Stone, Bungaberg and Marathon, Castle under Pinken Bar, Wanko Yama. Heel and toe. Hogan, Rolling Stone, Bungaberg and Marathon, Castle under Pinken Bar, Wanko Yama. Iron rations come in handy during stops at Durham Dandy. Passengers have died of hunger during halts at Garradunga. Hogan, Rolling Stone, Bungaberg and Marathon, Castle under Pinken Bar, Wanko Yama. Let us post before we part, losing treble, stout apart, drunk will sober, rain or shine, on the Queensland railway line. Hogan, Rolling Stone, Bungaberg and Marathon, Castle under Pinken Bar, Wanko Yama. Hogan, Rolling Stone, Bungaberg and Marathon, Castle under Pinken Bar, Wanko Yama. Hogan, Rolling Stone, Bungaberg and Marathon, Castle under Pinken Bar, Wanko Yama.
For the quota to come, there's a far away look on the face of the bum. The maid's gone all cranky and the cook's acting queer, but a terrible place is a pub with no beer. The stockman rides up with his dry dusty throat. He breasts up to the bar, pulls a wad from his coat, but the smile on his face quickly turns to a sneer when the barman says suddenly the pub got no beer. There's a dog on the veranda for his master he waits, but the boss is inside drinking wine with his mates. He hurries for cover and he cringes in fear. It's no place for a dog round a pub with no beer. Oh, Billy the blacksmith, the first time in his life, has gone home cold sober to his darling wife. He walks in the kitchen, she says, "You're early, me dear." Then he breaks down and he tells her that the pub's got no beer. Oh, it's lonesome away from your kindred and all, by the campfire at night where the wild dingoes call. But there's nothing so lonesome, so dull or so drear as to stand in the bar of a pub with no beer.
All right, Pub with No Beer by the Dubliners, of course, a really cool Australian song choice. So the other thing I'd like to do is play a bit of Danny Spooner. He's a real big fan of mine. Sorry, I wish. I'm a big fan of his, and got to meet him once actually at the when he came over for the folk festival a few years ago. And this is him doing a song called Queensland Whalers.
I've sailed the North Atlantic where the ice flows in the breeze. I've sailed the Dutch West Indies in the calm blue sunny seas. When I think of ships and seamen, me thoughts return again to a season spent in Moreton Bay with Queensland whaling men. Sing ho, ye Queensland whalers who cut the sugar cane and drove the herds of cattle o'er the dry and dusty plain. You've dug the Oradizer, lay countless miles of rail, and now you've come to Moreton Bay to catch the humpback whale. For men who've chased the brumbies, caught bullocks by the tail, it really is no problem to catch a humpback whale. Just spare your eye and see us, put your gun through rigging struts, and when he breaks the coral scrub, you belt him in the guts. Sing ho, ye Queensland whalers who've cut the sugar cane and drove the herds of cattle o'er the dry and dusty plain. You've dug the Oradizer, laid countless miles of rail, and now you've come to Moreton Bay to catch the humpback whale. For the man up in the crow's nest, as whaling legend goes, looks out across the water with a cry of there she blows. But here in sunny Queensland, you'll often hear him shout, here goes a bloody beauty, mates, I'll get your finger out. Sing ho, ye Queensland whalers who cut the sugar cane and drove the herds of cattle o'er the dry and dusty plain. You've dug the Oradizer, lay countless miles of rail, and now you've come to Moreton Bay to catch the humpback whale. From Moreton to Caloundra, brown whaler sharks abound. They wait like dingoes in the scrub for a wounded beast that's down. But their bite for blood and savagery it never could compare with a bite the inland revenue took from our bonus share. Sing ho, ye Queensland whalers who cut the sugar cane and drove the herds of cattle o'er the dry and dusty plain. You've dug the Oradizer, laid countless miles of rail, and now you've come to Moreton Bay to catch the humpback whale. But with fuel tanks running low, me boys, we head for Brisbane town and to the nearest boozer to let the sudders drown. With beer and fiery whiskey and plonk of vintage rare, we steer a steady zigzag course without a bloody care. Sing ho, ye Queensland whalers who cut the sugar cane and drove the herds of cattle o'er the dry and dusty plain. You've dug the Oradizer, laid countless miles of rail, and now you've come to Moreton Bay to catch the humpback whale. But around the season's over and we can all return to treat our wives and sweethearts and have a little fun. We'll rant like cattle drovers and we'll roar like whaling men, and when the season starts next year you'll find us back again. Sing ho, ye Queensland whalers who cut the sugar cane and drove the herds of cattle o'er the dry and dusty plain. You've dug the Oradizer, laid countless miles of rail, and now you've come to Moreton Bay to catch the humpback whale.
Cool, good my name. Okay, so I really couldn't help myself, and I've got to play a little bit more Phil Garland. This time we're going to play this really awesome slow air that he did with his Canterbury, Crutchings, Bush and Cayley band, and called Dark Island. And after that we'll probably do my other favourite song off the album, which is Flash Stockman. All right, so away we go.
stockman to me trade, and they call me Ugly Dave. I'm old and grey and only got one eye. In the yard I'm good at cause, but just put me on a horse, and I'll go where lots of young uns dare and try. I'll be riding through the gidgee of a country rough and ridgy. I lose him in the very worst of scrub. I ride both rough and easy with a dewdrop on my daisy. I ride down Bobby Dazzler in a pub. Watch me use a whip. I can make the buggers jib, can make the bloody echoes a roar and ring. Oh, with the Brandon I know, hell, I'm a perfect flaming swell. In fact, I'm Duke of every blasted thing. Just watch me spoil and hide, I can put on lots aside, can act the silver tail as if me blood was blue. You can strike me pink or dead, if you stood me on me head, I'd be as good as any other two. I've a notion in me pate, so it's luck it isn't fate, that I'm so far above the common run. So when anything I do, you can split me fair in two, from far too bloody good to be in one.
Awesome. Cool. So that was Flash Stockman, and before that, Dark Island. All right, so that's pretty much the show. I really didn't want to finish the show without playing some Mike Harding, so I'll do that now. This is the song The Day the Pub Burned Down, and that's us. Kia ora and have another good week.
Pull up a stump and lend an ear, and a story I'll relate. About a sinful waste of beer I will elucidate. I'll tell of how calamity struck Wapakiwi town and caused a gruesome tragedy the day the pub burned down. We all had gathered in the bar upon that fateful day. By horse and foot and motor car we all had made our way, while listening to Manuka Jones, New Zealand's finest liar. We heard a cry that chilled the bones, the flaming pub's on fire. There'd been a drought for weeks and weeks, the wells and tanks were dry. No water flowed along the creeks, we had no town supply. The blazing sun without relent turned all the green to brown. Imagine our predicament the day the pub burned down. Through smoke and flame we dragged the booze to safety out the door, then thought of what we stood to lose and rushed back in for more. Stand by, the fire brigade is here, those boys of high renown. Oh, firemen, firemen, save the beer and let the pub burn down. They bashed the tops of barrels in while strong men knelt to pray. They shoved their flippin' hoses in and shouted, "Pumps away!" They fought with beer and lemonade that raging fire to drown. We fought and cursed the fire brigade the day the pub burned down. Now more porks haunt the old pub site round Wapakiwi town, and shickers roam the hills at night and hunt the firemen down. They curse the cash they cannot spend, their raging thirst to drown. Dry horrors drove them around the bend the day the pub burned down.